Hello all, and welcome to Contemporary Sociological Theory.
Part 2, walking through the unit, what we mean by theory, how the pieces fit together. Right, so after that brief introduction, let's actually turn to the slides now and begin to map out what this unit is doing. I want you to think of this less as a checklist of weeks and more as a journey, a movement through a set of recurring questions. We'll keep returning to the same problems, but each time from a slightly different theoretical position. So, if at times it feels like, didn't we already talk about this? The answer is often yes, but differently. Things will often move dialectically. Each theory often proceeds as a reaction to the previous one, till they crystalise into a new original synthesis, which in turn, however, leaves its own blind spots. So a new theory comes in to tackle these, and so on. It is partly for this reason that the structure of the unit attempts to follow a chronological historical order, but we will often be going to tangents, especially in relation to how each week's material might have influenced future developments. How the unit works each week. Let's start with how the unit works in practice. Each week we meet for 2 hours, 1 hour lecture, 1 hour seminar. The lecture is where I introduce the week's topic, the theoretical framework, the historical context, why this theory emerged when it did, and what problem it was trying to solve. It's not meant to be exhaustive, and it's not meant to close things down. It's mostly a guide to your reading list. Think of it as opening up a space. The seminar is where we slow everything down. That's where we clarify concepts, where we compare theories, where we ask whether a framework actually helps us understand something concrete. And sometimes, where we push back and say, I'm not convinced. Reading is crucial here. I would strongly recommend that you identify 1 or 2 core readings each week and really spend time with them. Read slowly. Read with questions. Don't try to read everything on the list. That's not the expectation. And do keep an eye on Blackboard. I'll be using it actively throughout the term. The aims of this course. These aims are doing quite a lot of work, so let me unpack them briefly. First, this unit aims to familiarise you with the current landscape of sociological theories that inform research today. Not just classic names, but approaches that still actively shape how sociologists think and work. Second, the unit is about understanding the movement of sociological theory over time. Theory doesn't develop in a straight line. It develops through debate, disagreement, and reaction. We'll be seeing that very often, a new theory emerges because someone, somewhere, is dissatisfied with what came before. And third, this unit is explicitly about application. Theory here is not something you memorise and admire from a distance. It's something you use to frame questions, to empirically interpret contemporary developments, to critique arguments, including first and foremost our own, making the familiar look strange. Today's agenda. Today we're doing groundwork. We're asking, what is sociological theory? What does it do? How does it relate to research? What basic vocabulary do we need in order to navigate the debates that follow? And then I'll walk you through the rest of the course, including the assessment, before we shift gears in the seminar. What is sociological theory? This looks simple, and it isn't. Sociological theory is about the social world, social relations, about how what one person or group does is shaped by, and in turn shapes others. It's about the socius, being with others. And already, you can see that this takes us across different levels. Face-to-face interaction, institutions, classes, states, global relations. One of the things you'll notice very quickly is that different theories privilege different levels of analysis. That's often a deliberate choice, but it's hardly a flaw, although it comes with a series of limitations. Generalization and abstraction. Theory involves abstraction. We take specific cases, situations, observations, and treat them as examples of something more general. We develop concepts that allow us to see patterns rather than isolated events. This is powerful, but it also comes with risks. Abstraction always leaves something out. And one of the recurring questions in sociological theory is, what gets lost in the process of generalizing? This is where many of the debates you'll encounter later begin. Explanation. At its core, theory tries to answer why and how questions. Why does the world work this way rather than another? How is social order possible? Why does this pattern persist? Why here? Why now? Some theories aim for causal explanation, others aim for interpretation or understanding. Others are explicitly critical. They ask not just how things work, but whether they should. So when you read theory, it's always worth asking, what kind of explanation is this actually offering? Theory and research. This is a really important point, and one we'll return to throughout the unit. Theory and research are not separate stages. There is no moment where you collect raw facts and then apply theory afterwards. Theory shapes what you notice, what you ask, what you consider relevant, and even what you treat as evidence. There is no innocent data. That might feel unsettling at first, but it's also what makes sociological research intellectually interesting. Basic vocabulary. This slide introduces a tension that runs through the entire unit. Micro versus macro, agency versus structure, voluntarism versus determinism. Many theories position themselves somewhere along these axes, others try to bridge them, some reject the distinction altogether. A lot of what we'll be doing this term is watching how different thinkers struggle with this problem and how they try to resolve it, or refuse to. Basic vocabulary. Similarly here, consensus versus conflict, substantialism versus relationalism, modern versus postmodern, human versus non-human. These are not neutral binaries, they carry histories, assumptions, power relations. Later in the unit, feminist and post-colonial theorists will push very hard on these categories, asking who they serve and who they exclude. Moves and counter-moves in CST. These slides give you the broad intellectual arc of the unit. Early 20th century sociology crystallizes around Marxism, structuralism, and functionalism. Then come reactions. Microsociology and rational choice push back against functionalism. Neo-Marxism reacts against economic determinism. Post-structuralism unsettles the idea of stable structures and subjects. Later, there are attempts at synthesis, Elias, Bourdieu, network approaches. And then feminist and post-colonial theory fundamentally reframe the field by asking, whose knowledge counts and whose was marginalized from the outset? This is not a linear story of progress. It's a story of tension, critique, and reworking. Assessment. Very briefly on assessment. You'll complete a formative critical review. One article or chapter, one theorist, treated like a critical book review. This is about practicing the skill of theoretical engagement. And then the summative essay, 3,000 words, one thinker, sustained critical analysis of their contribution. All the details are on Blackboard. We'll return to this in much more detail later. So, that was the map. From next week onward, we move to the territory. We take one theoretical framework at a time. We situate it historically. We briefly introduce its concepts, and we ask what it helps us see. We try to unpack them in the seminars. Next week, we begin with early sociological theory, precursors, the classics, the others, and with a question that never really goes away. How is social order possible? But before we do that, let's switch gears and use the rest of the session to get to know each other a bit better. Fears, contributions, expectations,